You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, huge shout out to our sponsors. The Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatobi for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. So go to thedoghouseokc.com and follow them on Instagram at thedoghouseokc, and hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to an episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. We are in this wonderful home today, in one of the most magical places in Oklahoma City. I love this neighborhood. It's so good.
Oh, don't you? Yeah.
It's the best.
You feel like you're coming home.
Trees,
Yeah.
beautiful homes, older homes with character. But gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Linda Vater. You do a lot of really cool things. You have an incredible YouTube channel, social media, website, outdoor living space, lifestyle, everything. And I'm excited to dive into the story because I followed you for a while. You post amazing content. I'm excited to dive into how you found what you do and why you do it, because you mentioned earlier before we started recording, it's great, when you just find a passion, right? And then fully dive into it. And so, I'm sure looking back at your, when you're running around, thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life and dreams and childhood, whatever it is, you probably didn't think you'd have a YouTube channel and be speaking to people.
Well, there wasn't even such a thing.
Right.
Yeah, there wasn't even such a thing.
So I'm really excited to dive into your story. Just met your wonderful husband. You guys obviously love to travel, a beautiful home here. People who know you that listen to this, watch this, are fully aware of everything you do. But I'm excited to share the story, of you and behind everything that you do. So thank you for welcoming me into your home. I'm excited to dive into this. It is snowy and icy outside, which is not great for plants, right? And there's covers on everything outside.
Yeah.
But, I will link Linda's Instagram and content and website down below and YouTube channel. You go check out what this place looks like in the summer. Lots of colorful things and bees and everything flying around. It's awesome. So excited to dive into your story. Take us way back.
I'm originally from Indiana. And through just a lot of different life experiences, let's just say I ended up here, and now I am a full-blood Okie. And you and I were talking about just, wow, how Oklahoma City has been transformed in the past 20 years. Is just, it's unbelievable. I'm embarrassed to say this, but some of you may relate. I can remember, like 30 years ago, I'd say, where's your favorite place in Oklahoma City? Well, the airport. Well, that is not true anymore. Yeah. It is not true anymore. So in addition to doing what I do about gardening and lifestyle, I also like to think of myself as an ambassador for Oklahoma and the best of Oklahoma and its people and the very kind of rustic and elegant beauty of Oklahoma, because we're kind of a non-traditional venue where you think of gardening and things of that nature. Yeah. So that I like things that are a little bit of a surprise to people, and I think that's one of them.
Yeah. So Indiana, does that mean you're an Indiana basketball fan? Is that dangerous?
Heavens no. I come from, well, it can be dangerous. I come from a very large family, and I've got 9 brothers and sisters, the majority of whom still live in the land of the Hoosiers. So football, basketball, everything now, it can be a little bit contentious, but my dad was a big basketball player. And so we have that commonality. And I love my Indiana roots, and I love my Oklahoma home.
Yeah. So where are you out of the 9?
I'm right in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
quote, problem child.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't want to digress too much, but it was an interesting situation. My mother and father had 7 children, and my mom died at a very young age. She died when she was just 36 and left my dad with with 7 children. Can you imagine? And the youngest at that time was not even 1, and I was 5. And he later remarried a surgical nurse who had been a nun, and they immediately had a set of twins and 1 more. So I think I've often said that everything I learn about communication and just about interactions with people is predicated on the fact that I was one of 10 kids. And there's there's an element of survival, but there's also an element of empathy and intuition and the things of that nature that comes from being one of 10.
Wow. So you were at such a young age that do you have memories of mom?
Very few.
Yeah.
And that was back in the time. She died in 1962, and that was back in an era you're too young probably to remember, but when it was just it was a very kind of stoic mentality. You just kind of pulled yourself up by the bootstraps and you just went on, and you didn't talk about things, and you didn't, which is sad because it erases the very existence in some cases of people. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You're stronger at the broken places. Now my family is very close, despite living literally all over the world. And so it, like everything, nothing is all good, nothing is all bad. It just is what it is.
Yeah. So many, like you said, the whole family comes together, right? And I'm sure your older siblings have more of a memory with and remembering how your dad dealt with things and how family deals. I mean, it's loss is not easy, regardless if you've got 7 kids or no kids. I mean, I can't imagine what that was like for your dad to raise everybody.
Yeah, I can't either. When other people say they're having a bad day, I think, oh man, you don't know what a bad day is. But there is redemption in everything. And life with my second mother was not easy, but sometimes I said things can be extremely tragic, and there can be poor behavior manifested all around, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that you need to find blame or you need to find whatever. You just need to navigate through. Something can be just tragic. And life isn't easy. We all know that.
Yeah. If it's easy, something's probably wrong and you don't see it yet.
Yeah, right. You just haven't lived long. You just haven't lived long enough yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's all of the experience, that we have. But I think it's also, I like to think that it is one of the reasons that my content resonates with people, is because I think sometimes there can be this misconception of influencers. A lot of it depends on what they choose to show their publics. But I think sometimes there's this misimpression that, life is so easy for her. She has this beautiful garden. She, probably spoiled growing up and all of those kinds of things. And I think it's nice sometimes to disabuse people of what preconceptions they might have when they see someone in a social media context. People, when I was gardening in my other home where I lived for about 30 years, I would say, no, I did most of this myself, physically myself. Yeah. And I think they were surprised at that. That's not so much the case now because I do so many other things and I don't have the time and I'm a lot older. But I think if there's any one message I like to get across on my content is that this kind of lifestyle is accessible to everyone. Because when I was a poor, struggling college student, putting myself through college and everything, I like to still think that I led a very beautiful lifestyle because it was a matter of paying attention and recognition and working with what you have. And we all can do that. Because if I can garden in Oklahoma in the land of Job, you can do it if you live in gardening heaven with reliable rainfall and moderate temperatures.
Yeah. It's a mindset, right? Like I said, when you go back to when you're in college and everyone kind of has those moments, or probably majority of people have those moments of feeling like they're really struggling. There is beauty in it if you choose to see it, right? And there is great days, and there is bad days, but it's just like there's things that, and now, you look back on those days and you're like, I'd love to go back to some of those.
Oh yeah, no, isn't it true? It's so true, and I don't want to sound Pollyannish. I'm a big complainer. Often my cup is not half full; it's half empty. But it requires just kind of a constant constant reminder to all of us that we're so fortunate. And it's that now kind of overused attention on gratitude and things of that nature, but in a very primal way, it's very, very true.
It's important. Yeah. So childhood under, not great circumstances. You're growing up, you're really young when tragedy happens, but you grow up and then, around all your family, and things aren't easy. I'm sure there are moments, and now it's great to look back with your family and you're all tight knit and, going through the fire, you get forged together, right?
Yeah.
What was kind of, your release as a kid? What were you into? What did you want to be when you grew up? Like, how was that growing up in Indiana around your family and thinking, you know, were you thinking, I can't wait to get out of here? Or were you thinking, I'm excited to dive in? Did you know what you wanted to do?
Oh, heavens, no. But I will say some of the best, my training, I actually have an MBA in business communications. And so I was in the professional world for a while. I worked for Pfizer Labs for years. I was director of admissions at Oklahoma City University and then traveled around as a business consultant. So that was not what I was formally trained to do. But I do think that over time and over your life, you amass certain skills. So you were saying earlier that you're not trying to do these kinds of podcasts or whatever. And I certainly was not formally trained to be a garden designer or to be on TV. Or, I wasn't formally trained to do any of that. But it goes back to something that I think is crucial, especially for parents and mentors in young people's lives. Pay attention to the things that really excite you. And even when I was little, I can remember just being enthralled when a seed would germinate. And in college, I was just obsessed, as so many young people are now, with houseplants. And I never in my wildest imaginings occurred to me that might be something that over time could be a path to earning a living and creating a business. It just was inconceivable to me. But it's that, it's that follow your bliss and do what you're passionate about. And now we would call them side hustles, but ultimately those kinds of expressions of passion and expertise and learning and constantly learning ultimately can turn into something you never expected and that didn't even exist. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, kids growing up now, they have the power of the internet and YouTube and TikTok and social media to chase those dreams and have those side hustles, or just have those personalities, or and I think the greatest thing that I always kind of tell some of my guests, sometimes they're kind of hesitant to come on the podcast. I'm like, think about this as documenting what you've done for the rest of your family, because it's going to live on YouTube, right? And that's one thing that, like, the generations that are going to come from your family or all of your family are going to see, like, wow, like, it's there. It's always going to be there, and there's so many times that, we look at, one of the greatest things I did with my podcast equipment was I went home and interviewed my granddad. We have
wonderful.
that now, right?
Right.
My grandma passed away, but we have that, right? And that's the thing too. It's growing up, like, there was VHS and there was maybe photos you'd print it out. We'd all, you'd go to your grandparents' house and there were suitcases full of photos from my grandparents in the attic, and we'd all thumb through them. But like, now
that was so special, wasn't it?
Now you just pull up your phone.
It was transporting. It was time travel.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's great too, is to look at it from I always look at it from a documentation side of, you're preserving these stories, and for you, you're preserving, the passion that you have, and then it's there for the rest of the world to see for us, generations to come, which is really cool to think of it that way. And I think for me, it takes the pressure off, the now and in the moment a lot, because some people, we're used to be in front of a camera now, but sometimes when you put lights in front of people and they're like, oh, talking to your great grandchild who's on the camera, like, don't worry about it. But yeah, you're right. It's finding that passion and, talking about parents seeing what their kids are into immediately, and just kind of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, keep an eye, because really it can be life transforming, and not from a business aspect, but my goodness, you have to have interests above and beyond just what feeds your checkbook. I mean, because it's a quality of life issue. And if you have no passions, my husband just retired recently. He's an avid traveler, an avid fisherman. And if you don't have those things that feed your soul, then I think it's just not as rich of a life. And I think that is just so important.
Yeah. So you mentioned going to university and, kind of having an eye for, buds, seeding and house plants. Where did you go to school? What was the decision to chase the education that you wanted and the job life and that direction?
Well, I think one thing that my parents, both of my mothers and my father, did was they both, or my father and my first mother, they came from very large families too, but they were highly educated, and there was always a premium on education, and it was never even in our family an option. I mean, it was just, or even an expectation. It was just, this is what, and so I think that that's one thing that my parents did is instilled in us. And also the joy of continual learning. It doesn't just stop. It just doesn't come out of a book, but it comes from life experiences. It comes from listening to other people's stories and from having important people in your life at various stages of your life who are affirming and who can share what they know on so many different fronts. So I think that was it. And it's interesting too. I think when I was younger, we moved a lot when I was young. My father worked for Eli Lilly pharmaceutical company. We moved around a lot. So I was in a lot of different schools and things, and there was disruption in addition to the just disruption in my family life. And I think I was, because of that, maybe a rather sullen child. I lived in books. I was more solitary. And I think that served me well because, again, it's the value of an inner life as well as an outer life. And then you get out of your shell and you mature and you realize that you actually need other people. And it just, it worked out well. And one thing that is so important to me is, yes, right now I make my living in a virtual way. I have made so many connections, so many good friends. You're one of them that started out because we both lived in this kind of digital way and our digital paths cross. But the real life relationships that I have built are just amazing, just amazing to me. And some of my best friendships, the people that are closest to me now, are people that I met via a digital presence.
Yeah, connection, right? It's amazing, and when you do meet that person who you've had a connection with online for so long, you meet them in person. It feels like you're not meeting them for the first time.
Yeah, it's just it's just seamless. Yeah, it's so it is all back to what we all crave, what we all hunger, and that's connection. And I think if you have just one or the other exclusively, maybe that's not optimal. But boy, if you have that, the synergy of both of them is simply life. It's just really life enhancing.
So you mentioned coming to Oklahoma City University, and once you graduated, where did you go to school?
Well, I started out at college in Indiana, and then I was putting myself through school. So I ended up going to UCO for my undergraduate and my graduate degree. And I was working on my MBA while I was director of admissions at Oklahoma City University. So I kind of, kept those two worlds separate. And I did that for years, and I loved it. Waited a long time till I didn't get married till I was in my 30s. I was very fortunate. I was able to buy my own home and do all of those things first. And then I was doing educational marketing and consulting when I finally got married. And I then unexpectedly got pregnant, and it just became untenable for me to be on the road and have a child. So my husband and I moved to Crown Heights, and we bought a home there, and we did some renovation on the home. And then I finally had the time to really flesh out and pursue this passion that I have and learn, because I knew nothing about gardening. And I have often said, and I've written several books, and in my inaugural book, I said, I raised my family while I raised my garden, and one became metaphorical for the other, and both taught me about the other. And so it was very.
So school brought you to Oklahoma City for the
school. Yeah, school brought. Well, I had actually lived in Edmond, and I we lived in Edmond for a while, and I went to junior high and a part of high school. And then the summer before, as I said, sometimes life was disrupting. The summer before my senior year in high school, we moved again, and we moved back to Indiana. So I actually spent 1 year, my senior year in Indiana, graduated from there, and then went to college for a year there. But a lot of my friends were still,
Right. Those
you know,
core
were,
moments
yeah,
of your
yeah.
childhood growing
And
up are
so
huge.
I came back with one of my friends, and so it worked, you know,
Yeah.
it worked out. And then I moved out of the state again for a job, and then I moved back in. So I guess my heart belonged to Oklahoma. And certainly once you raise your children in a place,
Yeah.
it it becomes yours, and their experiences become yours. And now neither one of them live in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
but still I have two sons, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Do they share your green thumb?
Yes and no. My older son went to University of Virginia, and he now lives in Singapore. And his wife does a completely different kind of gardening. They do a completely different kind of gardening, more urban, more rooftop. But my son in Denver, I have my first grandchild. Yes, he and his wife and my granddaughter Danny, they have now started to garden, and it's
brilliant.
it's fun, and I get lots of 911 calls now on, thank God for FaceTime. You can walk me
Right.
around. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this?
Yeah.
And I'm very close to my two boys, but nevertheless, this makes us even
Yeah.
closer.
How'd you meet your husband?
A blind date. We both were in our 30s, both working professionals, and I think didn't have time to
Right. Life's
whatever.
busy. Yeah.
And
And
so
you're traveling.
I have to tell you, I so love this. I love the kind of circularity of this. So mutual friend of ours introduced us, and she said that she, like I say, we were both in our 30s, and neither one of us married. And interestingly, we lived close to one another. We both owned our own homes and lived close to one another. But what I love about it, it was a blind date, and her husband, I knew her through a previous boyfriend, and her husband had been very good friends with my husband since their mothers were pregnant together.
Oh, wow. Practically brothers.
Practically
Yeah,
brothers.
yeah.
And now here's what I love about this. And one of the reasons I moved to this neighborhood is they now live mere blocks from us. She's my best friend. Her son lives on one end of my street. Her daughter lives on the other end of my street. We are all here together as we age. And I just, as somebody who doesn't have a long-term friendships with people because I moved around so much, the fact that now my dearest friend lives within blocks from me, well, you just can't. And in this magical neighborhood, you just can't buy that.
No, that
Yeah.
is special. to have
Yeah,
that. And
it
have
really
her
is.
kids close too, right?
Oh yeah, it's just I can borrow her grandkids, and it's just it's a little slice of Americana that I am grateful for every day. I never take it for granted.
Yeah. Where was your first date at?
Flips.
Oh, yeah. I love Flips.
Flips, and it's still there, and
such
it's
a good
still
lunch
going.
spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was before there was just a lot of options. But we both shared lots of things in common. We're both avid readers, and I remember our first conversation. We were both reading "Love in the Time of Cholera" by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I thought, boy, there's not too many men out there that are reading that kind of thing. And we love to, like I say, we love to travel, and so it
That's really
worked out.
I'm sorry the Flips are still around because you guys can still go back.
Yeah, we still go back there, and it's kind of the same.
I'm sure it hasn't changed at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. So,
I heard
yeah.
they used to throw some big. They used to be a good night spot. Flips used to be a really good weekend spot.
Yeah, it
late
used to
nights
be. It used to be a good weekend spot. Our first date after my first son was born, we went back to Flips. When we were able to get a night out. And don't you just love history?
Yeah.
Don't you
absolutely.
just love having connections to places and things and people?
there's something to be said about walking the same path as well,
Mhm.
or same streets, or through the same neighborhood or same restaurant as, others from 20, 30, 40, maybe, growing up in the UK, right?
Yeah.
I'd walk through castles going to school, and just kind of your imagination runs. But yeah, like history's the best,
Well,
right? When you really dive into it, especially if you're a reader, the things you find out, through the older books.
but just living in this neighborhood, it is living history.
Yeah.
It is just, what went on in these homes.
Yeah.
When we first bought this, I refer to it as the cottage on the hill because it is a quintessential English cottage
It is.
looking. And when we first bought it, we were told, oh, I think it was built in 1935 or whatever. And then one of my followers said, "Oh, no, 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 Linda, you're home." And she sent me a newspaper article from 1914 that was in the Daily Oklahoman of my home that was in there because at that time it had been professionally decorated by a new concept at that time, interior designers, and it referenced the age of the house. So that was just fun. But you just imagine, what was it like back in the 40s when that some of these doors were knocked on with very tragic news about a lost loved one during the war, or in the 60s, or just during the renovation of some of these old neighborhoods. It just is, I feel that. I feel this connection to history when I walk through these neighborhoods.
And for me, growing up back home, playing golf, being outside, I have a weird connection to trees. Oklahoma doesn't have trees. Your neighborhood has trees, right? And it's always, when you're being in a real estate professional, just traveling around or driving around the state, and you're like, there's, trees here because they've either been blown down by tornadoes or
an ice storm.
Or an ice storm, yeah. But you come here and, when we do get ice storms in this neighborhood, everyone prays, right? Because there was a couple of years ago, it was a bit of a disaster and trees are down and roads are blocked. But driving through here in the fall or in the spring, it's the most magical place, right? And then at Christmas too, go all the lights and everything. It's just trees and I'm just like, who back in the day did plant all these trees? Can we
thank them?
So much, right?
Can we have a kumbaya moment? And it makes it that imperative upon us to now replace some of those trees or to plant trees for the future. Such an optimistic act.
Yeah, I have a friend, I have a house coming up for sale in Edmond soon, and they planted trees at the back, and they're only 4 or 5 feet high, but they're going to be, 18, 20 feet high when they're fully done. And I'm like, this is going to be so cool when you come back to this. They just had their first child. I'm like, you're going to come back to this house and be, back to what you said about having kids and where your home is set. You're going to drive past this house and remember those times, and now look at those trees and be like, wow, remember when they were, 4 feet tall. So Oklahoma, you have a home here, your life's here, you meet your husband, you're in the professional world, you have your kids. And so that's when you sort of you have your kids, you're like, I'm not going to work, I'm not going to travel, but I need to do something with my time. Maybe sleeping or not. I need to run around the house.
Garden. It was, it wasn't even an option to me. I was compelled, driven. I just had to do it. And that was before you could get the answer to any gardening question.
Right.
At the click. Yeah, in seconds, which I kind of resent a little bit. But I read and I learned, and I had wonderful gardening mentors in the neighborhood. And the more you do, the more you learn. And then I think it reached a tipping point, and it's that analogy to the movie Field of Dreams, which you're probably too young to remember, but that's build it.
I haven't seen it, but I know the movie.
Build it and they will come. And so I built grew a beautiful garden, and it started to garner more and more attention. And then it just became a cascade of nice opportunities, lots of magazine shoots. I started writing for magazines, started social media presence. I was on Channel 4 for years.
What year was this that everything kind of started?
It was just like I say, it was an unfolding evolution. Okay. I would say it maybe a pivotal point was, I'm trying to think of the first time I was in magazine, was in Southern Living magazine, and I want to say that was in 2007.
Okay.
They came and they did a shoot, and that and this again, I love the circularity of this, how things come full circle. I that established a relationship with me. I would now say with my brand, but with me and Southern Living magazine, and I have just made great friends. And I was last week had a wonderful phone visit with Sid Evans, the publisher at Southern Living magazine, and they haven't been to this garden yet. So
This was at the old house. Okay.
yeah, they were at the old house many times. I lived there for 32 years, many times. Lots of magazines came.
Yeah.
Some of them, I'm proud that this is one of my prouder things. Two of them, Victoria magazine and Garden Gate magazine, had never been to Oklahoma.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
And now they
Yeah.
come pretty consistently. Anyhow, so this garden is now going to be in Southern Living. They're going to come and do a shoot in May of this year, I think. So that's nice, you know.
So was the house you guys had in Crown Heights, did it look similar to this one before you started, as far as just grass?
It was awful. it was even worse than this.
Bermuda grass, terrible.
Yeah, and you know, we've all seen it. It did have. When one of the reasons we bought the house, it was a very classic English Tudor house. Later, my son gave it the moniker of the fairy tale house because it had very deep pitched roofs, and then slowly over time, with it looks like a fairy tale when there's 1,000 tulips in bloom, and so when we moved in, there was what now is, we documented it, is over 100-year-old tree, an oak tree, a Shumard oak, that was there, and it was one of the reasons we bought the house. So you can imagine 100-year-old tree in Oklahoma, there's not going to be a lot of grass underneath it. So it was just that tree, house, deadpan clay. And so it was a challenge. And a friend of mine at that time, who was a landscape architect, she helped me, and I learned through her. And again, it just evolved over time, and the transformation was pretty incredible. And unlike this one, which happened very quickly, we've been here 3 years now, that one kind of sort of happened over 3 years, but it took a while for it to really take on, I think, the magic that it eventually eventually captured.
And you mentioned magazine, and it's coming up on roughly 20 years when that first magazine went out, which, again, back to time flying, it's crazy.
Yes.
But kind of 06, 07 time, this is launching, and you're in Southern Living magazine, and they're coming to Oklahoma for the first time. You mentioned you've written books. You mentioned a little bit about there's education in your background too. And so you have this and media training in your background as well. So I love the podcast because it forces people to look back. And I've said this many times, when we get to now, you're looking back at the roadmap and putting all these little experiences and pieces together to who you are today. It all makes sense, right? It didn't back then, but it does now, right? No. Which is really cool to look back on. Late 2000s, things are happening, and then you're, writing the news, the books, everything comes. But the other thing that interests me, and you mentioned it just now, is a friend who was a designer. You obviously have this passion for design as well that's come in. And so my first question is, how does your passion for design evolve into designing your own spaces from that, red clay under an oak tree in the old house?
I think I'm not a trained designer. I say that over and over again. I'm not a trained horticulturalist. My degree is from the Oklahoma School of Heartache and Hard Knocks.
Trial and error.
Trial and error, and lots of mistakes. I think I talk a little bit about what I call my theory of garden relativity.
Okay.
And I think it's true about your life as well. And that's every one thing in your garden relates to every other thing in your garden. And you find a starting point. And that starting point for me, from all of my reading, was you have an English Tudor home.
Okay.
So, you might want to have an English style garden. And so once I had that epiphany, then I started reading about those types of gardens, why the architectural lines of this kind of house, how that informs the bed lines and the types of plantings and things of the style of garden that's consistent with that home. And then we traveled a lot. And so I was able to go to the Cotswolds and places like that and say, oh, that's the vernacular. So I then kind of began to learn the language, the garden language that was fluent with the language of my architecture. And so I just started doing that. And then I realized that I would do this one thing, and then that one thing in the garden would tell me, oh, now that tells me to do this.
Yeah.
And then that will tell me to do the next thing. And all of that's outlined in my first book.
So that anchor point then was the like you said, the style of the home and you know and everything, and that except that just like the domino effect falls.
Yeah.
Like that's really cool because you can kind of follow the recipe of it gives you direction.
Right. And just start somewhere.
Yeah.
And just start somewhere. And yeah, you can make mistakes, so you can retract, and it has to be flexible based on where you live. I call it good garden fit. You know, where do you live climatically, geographically? What direction does your house face? How old are you? What's your budget? Do you have kids? What are the demands on your time? And once you answer a lot of those questions, then it will inform the direction you should take.
Yeah. Now you put all these things in ChatGPT and it says these are the plants you should have.
Yeah.
Back then you're asking these list by list. Right now with the ice is melting and my front yard is not in the sun, and so half of my driveway is completely covered in snow and ice, and the other half, like the front bit, is just like my backyard's fine. I don't need to drive in my backyard.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is you look and you can drive around and you can think, and you can do a lot of deconstruction. So it's as simple as sometimes, okay, drive, because a lot of this ChatGPT cannot answer because there's too many variables that it doesn't know about. But you can drive up and down a street and you can say, even in the dead of winter, and you can say, why does this landscape look good to me and this one doesn't look good to me and this one looks good to me? And then you deconstruct element by element why that looks good to you. Oh, it looks good because there's lots of evergreen, so there's still something that's interesting in that landscape. Oh, it looks good because it's very nicely edged. It has really strong lines. It's got really good bones. So much of it is just paying attention.
When does it go from a passion to a side hustle and then a career? How is that transformation?
Well, like I say, none of it was ever intentional.
Sure.
So if you want, here it goes. You build a garden. Somebody sees the garden. They appreciate the garden. A magazine comes and they want to photograph your garden. Other people in the community see your garden and they want you to help you with your garden. Then you help people with their garden and you start charging to do that. Then Linda Kavanaugh becomes somebody who wants you to help them with your garden. And Linda Kavanaugh says, do you want to start doing something on TV? So you start doing something on TV.
Wow.
And then a local magazine here, Territory OKC, will you write an article for our magazine? So I wrote an article for that magazine. It won an award on a national level. Then I went to that convention. Then when I was there, I met with other people. Would you start representing our brand? Would you start doing this? I had TV experience by then. I look back to my early TV and I think, oh my God. But you keep getting out of your comfort zone. I keep doing things where I am willing to make an absolute fool of myself. And one of the things I love is that I have had opportunities to meet with lots of high school and college classes. And I say, you just keep saying yes to the next thing. I don't care how outside your comfort zone is. You just keep saying yes to the next thing and you develop that skill set. Then that adds to your portfolio of skills. And then you just keep adding on to that. But it starts with that first yes. So I started doing that. Then I started doing Instagram. Then I started doing YouTube. Instagram got hacked. So then I was forced to go to YouTube. So then I started doing YouTube. Then during COVID, I had two in the same week. Again, nothing is completely good and nothing is completely bad. So during COVID, I was contacted by a publishing house and they said, would you write a book? what else are you going to do during COVID?
Sat around.
And I'm thinking, oh, I have never written. I don't know. I don't, but, and then, what else are you going to do? So I wrote that book, which then later gave me permission to leave that garden. How could you leave that garden? Because I have been there, done that, stamped and delivered this. Now it's in publication. I've documented the history of this garden. I can move on. And QVC, the home shopping network, they contacted me and said, would you like to start designing a line for us? Build it. You just design it. And so I did that for a while before that kind of became untenable for a number of different reasons. So I did, okay, I'll do that.
And then you look back, you're like, how has this happened? And it's just one after the other, right?
One after the other. Yeah. And now it's just a combination of different things. And now it is, again, it's come back full circle. And I love this. So in May, I have so many lovely followers from around the world. And many of them, come by the cottage from everywhere, all over the country. And our connection has become above and beyond gardening. They come by and they tell me about their health struggles, or they come by and say, this gave me such comfort during this period of time. And then it becomes a mutual thing that virtual connections become personal connections. And so someone asked me, Linda, why don't you just bring some people to Oklahoma City? Why don't you just bring some of your followers to Oklahoma City? So in May 1st through the 5th, a group of probably around 30 people, because that's as many as we can accommodate, are going to come to Oklahoma City for an Oklahoma City boutique garden experience. And they're going to come not only to my garden, but they are going to visit so many of the places that I talk about on my channel. So we're gonna, go the first night, we're gonna go to Vast, and we're gonna look over all of Oklahoma City, and we're gonna have a steak dinner in one of downtown's, finest steakhouses. We're gonna go visit the bombing memorial. We're gonna go have high tea at the Teller. We're gonna visit other gardens. We're gonna visit other homes. We're going to do a tour of this historic neighborhood. We're going to visit some of my favorite shopping places. We're going to meet and discuss books at Commonplace Books. So they're going to stay at the Colcord. So it's a way that I can share my wonderful city and my garden with them. But more importantly, we will make a personal connection. Yeah. We will make a personal connection. And that's what it's all about. And not just with me. They will make personal connections with one another, with gardening kind of at the spoke of the wheel. And I love that. I'm really excited to do that.
It's so special to have people. One, hosting's always great, but to show off your home city, your hometown, the neighborhood, your home as well. And then also the incredible things that are around, like you said, the things that you talked about, but also, just to put that into context. Like you said, you're going to go to, the places that you talk about, right? And, these people, and from experience, when I go to places that I've seen on social media or seen on YouTube, and I'm like, or you meet those people and you're like, you're right. People need to do more of that. I know you guys love to travel, and that's one thing I always tell you, the younger generation, is like, just go, right? Like, just go travel, because they're like, I've seen it. I'm like, no, you haven't. You haven't seen the Eiffel Tower in person, light up at night for 5 minutes.
And you haven't met the people who live around the Eiffel Tower,
right? Yeah. All those Nutella crepes that they sell, across the street, like just little things like go and the smells, right, and all the things. But you get to bring people here, that's really special.
Well, and most importantly to me is I love Oklahoma City, and I'm passionate about it. But everybody that's coming, you have those same things where you live. Yeah. You have those same special places. You can find out who has the best almond croissant, within a 5-mile radius of you. Here it's Harvey's. Yes. But I mean, you can make those connections. And I say this from personal experience, because I wasn't somebody who always did this. Look through just that lens of, I am going to take for granted for the moment that I love my area. I love my neighborhood. I love where I live. I love the people that live here. Yeah.
It's back to what you said earlier about when you're in college, you're looking at, even though you're putting yourself through college and life seems to be a struggle, you're looking for those great things, right? And
Yeah.
everybody has those great things no matter where you are in life. And those highlights, those passions.
Or how broke you are. Because
Right.
there's been plenty of times. My husband's a small businessman, and I can tell you there's plenty of times. It ain't all, it ain't all roses.
You can't just leave it at work and come home.
Yeah, you just leave it at work and come home. But with the garden, you always have another day. And even after the worst ice storm, there's always another year. And the thing that, of course, that I stress about most is what's the weather going to be? What's the weather going to be? But, it might be 110, but now you'll know if it's 110 and I can still create a beautiful garden here, then you can do it where it's beautiful. This is, no matter how extreme, you can love the one you're with.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but but over.
You're having more good days than bad days
Right.
over a longer period of
Right.
time. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned, having photography done and writing stories. And when did you then turn the camera on yourself and start using social media as, your kind of vehicle to tell people and build your brand that way in a video form versus just written in magazine?
Okay, so it probably started, and again, this was a long time ago because now everybody is doing it. I was probably this was before Reels or anything. This was just a simple grid on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was probably one of the first that started doing like very quick 1-minute gardening tutorials in a video format. And that helped my Instagram account grow and for a pretty long period of time. And now I still do Instagram, but not nearly as much as YouTube. There's only so many hours in the day, and I don't have and I don't want to have a large support staff. So I do what is comfortable. I don't care if I have 1 million followers. I like having a couple 100,000. I'll take that. I like that sweet spot. And then at a certain point, it just, you do that. And then again, it just one thing feeds into another. Then all of a sudden, your Instagram account gets hacked. So then you go to YouTube. So then I started doing it on YouTube.
And so that was the big shift.
And that was a big shift to YouTube.
Okay.
And then YouTube's going, wow, this channel is getting lots of views. So then YouTube comes to your aid and helps your channel grow. And I like the fact that I can help support a couple people in my small business. Sometimes it's larger, sometimes it's smaller, depending on what's going on, but I can help people, earn a living in a very small, modest way, all doing something that I'm passionate about.
How has that been moving and keeping the passion? The passion's always there, but then there comes times where you're like, I have to think about this as you put your business hat on and have employees or support staff. How has it been navigating the content strategy side of things to, I have a passion, I'm going to do this, I'm going to upload here and there and do my thing, versus I have a business now, my YouTube, there's income from this and I have support staff. Was there a shift into a structured, this is the content strategy, this is the structure, we know what we're doing, versus I'm just doing this, I love doing it, I'm turning the camera on.
I wish that I could say
well, this is great for everyone.
I wish that I could say, oh no, I use all of those apps and I had planned this all out, and you and I were talking. And a lot of times we post the same day we shoot. Part of that is by virtue of the fact that what I do is seasonal.
Yeah.
And seasonality, I am also passionate about seasonality, and seasonality in all of its forms, not just it's spring, summer, winter, fall, but this is the season of my life. This is the season of whatever. And so over time, one kind of pivot that we made, which happened almost organically without me realizing it, was that it became as much about what I call garden-inspired living as it became about gardening. And so then I was able to go into more things like healthy aging. Well, how am I going to be able to continue to do this into my dotage if I love gardening, and gardening is a physical sport? So how am I going to continue to be able to do that? If my home is an extension of my garden and vice versa, how can I bring that beauty indoors? And then that got into interior decor a little bit and seeing not only how I do it, but how other people do it. So then we started doing tours of other people's homes and interiors and other people's gardens. And recently I've started doing a lot more outside of just Oklahoma. So recently we have done lots of shooting on the East Coast. So I've done some with some designers in New York City, with some of the real doyens of gardening, with Bunny Williams and other people like that. And I've had an opportunity to interview some of those people and visit their gardens. And I have just met so many fabulous people. And it's been so invigorating for me that it becomes less about views than it becomes about personal growth. It becomes less about channel growth and it becomes about personal growth and opportunities to be able to meet other people. And by extension, those connections that I make, for so long, people were so generous to me and showcasing my content in ways that helped me. I now can showcase other people's content. I can, oh, you've written a book? Let me introduce you to my publisher. Oh, can I write a foreword for your book? Let me write a foreword for your book. Let me see if I can get some more eyeballs on your channel or whatever. And that is just a wonderful thing. And I have made some wonderful, wonderful friends. And I also like the fact that it seems rather, and it still pinches me a little bit. I'll be made an introduction to some of these people, these designers in New York City or whatever, and a good friend of mine who's in that world will make the introduction and help set up the appointments. And then I'll show up with my videographer and we'll start doing the interviews. And then after the interview, and we've had just this wonderful discussion about design or, whatever, and they'll go, because we've obviously by that time, we've made a personal connection. We've made a personal, and they go, now, where are you from? And the fact that I can say I'm from Oklahoma, in the past, they had a preconception about what people from Oklahoma were like, and I can disabuse them of that and say, oh, no, we are the new Austin. We are up and coming. And that makes me so proud to be a good ambassador for Oklahoma. And so those are the things that give me a kick now. Views may go down, views may go up. The market is so saturated. You can find content everywhere. Those are the things that keep me going now.
Yeah, you're right. And through the podcast, I could totally agree with you. You meet people and you sit with them. And also, and I say this a lot too, it's rare now in today's world that you actually sit across the table from somebody and have a conversation, like a full conversation, versus like, oh, your phone's going off or, someone called or, the dog's doing whatever it is. Like it's, and the way that, and finding a way to do that. And you're talking about your passion. So it's an immediate, like, we like what we're doing. We don't know we're already going to get on, and then you're picking each other's brain on the weather or where they're at, or like I said, whatever, either the season in their life is, the season in their garden is, but also it sounds like the style of their garden, right? Like there's so many different variations out there, right? As there's in life and in work or whatever it is. So it's I'm sure there are days, like you said, you look back and you're just like, how did we get here? And I love it,
Yeah. And then there are days I look back, I don't want to, there are days I look at it and think, oh my God, I really do not feel like doing a video today. I really don't. I just would like to not have to be perky. I just would
put your game face on.
Put my game face. Well, you experience the same thing. And by the way, turnabout is fair play. So you're going to have to be on my channel now.
I'd love to. I have terrible gardening knowledge, but I'd love to.
Well, no, I have started doing some things where I'm interviewing other personalities about different things because I think your story must be very compelling, because how does somebody who comes from Wales come to Oklahoma in real estate and playing golf and then
end up with a podcast
and end up meeting a gardener. And now you are a self-avowed Okie lover.
I love it here.
How you must look back and think,
oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's funny what you said earlier about saying yes to things. I had the opportunity through a podcast connection and a friend that I made to when TED Talks came to Oklahoma City. A friend was in putting it on, and two guys, David and Brian, were the guys who hosted it at Tower Theater, and they asked me to be one of the speakers. And so my and it was a TEDx. It wasn't a TED Talk. They very strict on their branding, but it was TEDx Oklahoma City. And so my TED Talk was about saying yes. So when you said that, it resonated straight.
There you go.
Because of that, because I, and it was it came out kind of 2022 time. So everyone had kind of gone through the COVID era, and it was more about, people were happy to say no to things and have their own space. And I'm like, you've been stuck inside, say yes to things, get out there and do it. And I wouldn't be here without me saying yes to the, like taking a risk and doing things that putting you outside of your comfort zone. And I'd never been to the States before coming out here. I didn't come on a visit. I was like, yep, let's go. I had no idea where Oklahoma was. It was 105 degrees when I got here the 5th day, and it was miserable. it was so bad.
What have I done?
Yeah, but that was 2011, and I'm still here. So, and have, like I said, a business and a brand, and it's amazing.
Well, and I it's a full disclosure. I am the least brave person on the planet. I am not somebody who is a type T thrill-seeking personality that is really getting outside of my comfort zone. It really, and it's still, and on some occasions, it really still is. You really have to embrace looking like an idiot and just saying, no, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying, and that should count for something.
Well, and the other thing too is the editing's great. I just had Chef Kevin Lee on the podcast, who has Mott, who just opened the restaurant, and I said to him, he does so many social media videos of going to restaurants. Right now, one of his series is about finding the best burger in Oklahoma. And I said, why do you do that? Like, you have a great social media following. Like, why do you go out and kind of tell these, highlight these places, but also where does that come from? And he's like, I'm an introvert. He's like, that person that you see, I don't know how it happens, but in person, I'm not that guy, and he said, once that camera comes on, he's like, something happens in me that I can talk to a camera. But the other thing, he said, you don't see the amount of edits that I do. He said, my social media person's amazing, and all the cuts and edits, and she just has me say this, and then it cuts to something that's beautiful. But it's the being out there, going for it, standing in front of, your front yard with a camera on a tripod, right? Or people are driving by, whatever it is, just do it. And it's
and acknowledging a lot of times my videographer, he'll come, and I don't know if that's him or not, but they'll come and I'll say, oh gosh, the light is terrible today, the light is whatever, but you know what, that adds authenticity. It says that this is the way, this is the way it is. And it's real. This is real world. This is real life. This is what it's, this is what it's like.
Has your husband made cameos?
He has made yes,
he's famous.
He has made cameos, and my videographer is extremely camera shy and does not want to be on camera, and so now it's become kind of a game. I saw in his reflection. I saw something. And the other thing that you've probably discovered too, and you make people feel so comfortable, is that people will be so reticent to be on camera. And I'm so bad on camera, and they'll say, I'll be doing a home tour. I really don't want to be on camera. I really don't. Well, would you just allow me to introduce you? Or what? Yeah. And then they realize that all it is having a conversation with somebody else. And then before you know it, they're taking over. They're taking over. And I love seeing that.
Yeah. I did a couple of home tours 2 or 3 years ago with kind of coming out of COVID. And, there's such a great being in the real estate space and not wanting to just do the same stuff. Now everyone's doing home tours. Back then it was something a little different. And there's all these great, I need to start doing it again because I had so much fun doing it. There's all these videos out there, these, $130 million home tour in LA or all these things. And there's a great guy on social media. His name's Enes. He's from Turkey. He was a world champion kite surfer, and he ended up moving to the States, and he got into real estate after he retired kite surfing. I'll send you his YouTube channel. It's amazing. So he started doing it, walking around homes as a real estate agent with a GoPro, and now he's 3 or 4 years later, millions of subscribers traveling all over the world, touring all these places, and he doesn't even sell homes anymore. He just full-time YouTube. But I saw that. I'm like, well, no one's doing that in Oklahoma yet. And so I started doing it. We had a we did 13, 14 videos, and did pretty well. But as you know, it's not cheap to hire videographers.
No,
And so,
no,
and people
it's
watching
not.
now buying your homes. So I need to bring it back. And back to the other thing that we talked about earlier is sometimes because it was proper production, videographer, the whole thing, it looked great. We had a partnership with Porsche of Oklahoma City. I had Mizna Name Clothing. We did it right. But if I grabbed that camera now and walked through at home, I think I'd still get the same views because people love the authenticity of the iPhone versus what you've gone through with the whole production, the lights, the cameras.
They want to see the warts. They want to see the warts and all. Some of the biggest views on my channel have been like when I wore my shorts inside out and the tag was hanging out, and then I'd say, and Stuart wouldn't notice, and people would call attention to it. And so now on the next video, I'll say, Stuart, is my tag hanging? Is my tag hanging out? Because you want them to feel like these are people you would want to have in your home. Right. You want to be comfortable with them. It's not, everything is not always completely staged and beautiful. Before there is beauty, there is ugliness. And I'm going to show you the ugliness right along with the beauty.
Yeah. The building side of it, right? Because there are definitely, times where we've watched content growing up or movies or TV or whatever it is, and you idolize that person because you think their life is perfect. They look perfect on camera. But, being in this world, you don't know what's behind the camera, right? You don't know how the production goes and all the things. And they're by being a human being, and resonating with your audience, which is great to hear that you've built a connection with so many people and that you're bringing them here. Like that's,
but I think it's not only, so cool. Whether it resonates or not is one thing. I think it's a responsibility we have as people who are on social media. It is a responsibility we have to show people that life is not perfect and that, I look like this maybe because I worked all day doing this, or this is what it looked like before I started. Because, it's a mental health issue and people need to know, oh gosh, life is a struggle out there.
Finishing up I feel like we could sit here for an hour and drink coffee and tea, and
next time we'll have wine. We'll have wine out on the patio.
The beautiful artwork here and just the things on the wall, and the storyteller in me is just like, this piece has a story. Where'd you get? So we could be here all day. But you're busy. You have things going on. Would love to finish up with kind of over the years. You've been doing this, and the people that you've met, and just how much focus and how much intention you have as it comes across in just the time I've met you. It's not just I'm posting videos for this and this, and it's fun, but there's intent there. And so for me, what is it how your core message and your intention has evolved over time? Or what is it that you want people to walk away with, I guess, with the content that you put out and the message that you have?
I think if it comes down to one word, I want everything to feel accessible, regardless of what your life situation is. It's accessibility. I think all too often we watch social media, I can't have that because I'm not rich. I can't have that because I'm not thin. I can't have that because I live in Oklahoma. I can't have that because of this. It is accessible. It is accessible to you. That does not say, I am not saying that I am not acknowledging that your life may be difficult. I am not, I am all about that. I'm acknowledging the suffering of others and whatever. But I will say this, I can walk down the street and be absolutely charmed and mesmerized and come back and make a beautiful still life by things I have just picked up off the sidewalk. And you can too. I can get really great inspiration for a bouquet or for holiday decorating or for garden design or whatever by going to the library and reading a book. I can learn about something by being willing to get outside my comfort zone and introducing myself to someone and saying, can you teach me, can you tell me about that? How do I do that? And it's amazing how far a smile can go in people's being receptive to that. Just by, just by smiling. I think that's how you and I became. That's how you and I met each other or something, because we had mutual friends.
Yeah, a lot of mutual friends. Yeah, yeah. And then we recently connected at Jason's viral, Jason Gallagher's and Kelly, their viral movie premiere, which is really cool. Go watch Viral on
Decision. Yeah.
It's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for saying yes, right? And that message of just saying yes to, this doesn't make you uncomfortable because you're great at this, but over your career of saying yes gets you to where you are today. And I love that. It's awesome. And I'm excited to see now how this front yard evolves over time. And also in May, you're going to have a group of people out here and how you document that. And it's awesome. I say this a lot, it's great to be around people who have a passion for something and they go all in on that thing, and then they're unapologetic about just what they love to do, and it reminds me that I need to do more of that. So thank you for that.
And thank you for coming to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And saying yes to becoming an Okie, even in the heat.
Yeah. I had no idea about that was going to be. Thanks to my parents for giving me that opportunity. I wouldn't be here without them, or a lot of other people. I'm sure, the places that we get to, and there's always people that have helped us along the way, and there's a long list. For people listening, I'll put all the links to Linda's content. Go check out the YouTube channel, the website, and all the things, and books as well if you're a reader. But yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm sure we need to do this again. There's a lot of stories that people maybe who know you are like, you didn't tell this story. We'll get to that one day. Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. People listening, we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC, and hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.